Am I on?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Wow, what's this? I can't see my slide here. Is that on the screen?
PowerPoint is hard.
What the hell? What's this?
WebEx is also hard.
WebEx got harder. They updated it recently.
It's also like Outlook is hard too.
Outlook is hard. I still think it's cool. Apparently Comcast has some kind of integration with WebEx though, because when it said dial in, it gave the Comcast number and the conference ID right there. Like ours doesn't do that. Ours will say, ours it's like you give it phones that are, we give it phones that are like that phone number and then we pick from a list.
I think you have to give them enough money. And then things that are technically possible happen.
Yeah,
I think we actually have an internal team that do it.
that does stuff for WebEx?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Integrations.
Huh.
Not in. The hell?
I think it was the second.
Well, hopefully it'll come up. Oh, okay. Is that visible or?
No, black screen.
No.
Okay,
There
we're
you
good.
go. Okay,
Okay.
you're good.
Sorry about that. My name's John Rushford, and I've got a two-part presentation. I'm going to talk about host status and then give a brief overview on Nexthop. So host status is about, we added a feature in the traffic server that we call host status, and that lets us manage the availability of upstream hosts. And I worked with Vijay Mamedi from Apple on this, and we have it in Traffic Server 8. So host status. So when a transaction comes into an edge cache and it needs to, and the object's not in its local cache and it needs to go upstream, it will use parent selection, routing algorithms, and a list of upstream hosts to forward a connection to. And sometimes you have connection failures, the transaction times out, and traffic server will automatically mark the selected host down and retry the transaction after looking up a new host to go to. That works pretty well. There are configuration parameters that you can use to adjust the behavior of it, failure thresholds, timeout durations, and retry window durations. But sometimes you just need to remove an upstream host due to maintenance or hardware failures, and there hadn't been any way to do that other than by editing config files and editing and reloading config files. So we added this host status module to Traffic Server. It lets you can update. It tracks the availability of hosts. You can update it with traffic CTL and parent selection and a HTTP-SM check the host status for the status of the upstream host. And it's been added to ATS 8. So we, along with the module, we added a new host subcommand to traffic CTL. With traffic CTL, you can query the status on any upstream host, and You can mark a host up or down, and there's several options. We've got, as you can see here, there are reason tags. I'll go into those in a little bit. And there's also a time option. You can mark a upstream host down for, say, an hour, 3,600 seconds. And after that time's elapsed, the host status will automatically turn it back up. So when you mark down a parent, parent selection will just find another available parent to use to handle the transaction. You can mark down origin servers as well with it. When you mark down an origin, if the objects are in cache, it'll serve the object, but if it can't revalidate the object, it'll serve it stale, sending the warning 111 header, which means revalidation failed because it couldn't contact the origin server to revalidate. But once the configured max stale age is exceeded, the age of the object exceeds the configured max stale age, or if the object's not in cache, then a 503 service unavailable will be sent to the client. So here's an example of using traffic CTL to query a host status, and you'll get 3 lines of output. The 3 lines have to do with the reason tags. We added the reason tags in so that, say, if a health checking tool is using traffic CTL to mark host down, the health checking tool might want to look at the reason tags and not mark up a host that an operator has manually marked down. The tool should probably only manage hosts that with the reason tag that the health check tool is using. Here I've got an example at the bottom that shows that this cache was manually marked down. The 0 indicates it's unavailable. And then you can also, these are stats that get created, so you can remotely query these stats with the AStats plugin or the stats over HTTP plugin. And finally, today, what our operations group does is that if they need to perform maintenance on a mid-tier cache, they'll admin down the cache and then queue updates, and Traffic Ops and ORT will cause a new config file to be written and reloaded on the cache. And that's not an ideal, it's really not something you should do, because when you do that, you create an entirely new hash ring minus that host. So when you expect to go upstream, when the consistent hashing algorithm selects a mid-tier cache and that object's expected to be on the cache, well, it may not find it because you might get sent to an entirely different cache. So I think going forward with ATS, we should do some work in Traffic Ops to, instead of rewriting a parent.config file, that we make use of traffic CTL. So that's it for host data. It's pretty simple. Any questions about it? Yeah.
A couple again. If a parent proxy is marked down by like, it goes over the count and you manually set it up, does that override?
No.
Okay.
It'll
stay down for the
yeah,
whole.
it'll stay down. If you manually mark it down, it'll stay down until you mark it back up.
Okay.
Unless you use that time option.
But if it's automatically marked down by ATS, then you can't force it back up.
There's actually parent selection that manages its own health stats, and then this tool is
Okay.
used to override
Okay.
parent selection. a parent selection, they use this retry window. So if you mark
Right.
if you marked it down for, a significant amount of time, I think parent selection will automatically retry it.
Yeah,
when you
but
mark
it's
it back up.
after that amount of time, or that amount of time, I've seen varying values for what that gets set to, and there's always the trade-off between clients ending up going the down cache
Mhm.
versus the down cache coming back up, and then if you've got two mid caches, you've got a single point of failure then for however long the retry time is.
Yeah. There's going to be some changes with Nexthop to that. So.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, I'll move on to Nexthop. And this host status was actually part of this project. We wanted to be able to, provide access to, managing upstream hosts with health checks. But Nexthop is, we want to simplify the state machine and refactor parent selection so that parent selection will be used as plugins. Something that can be plugged in. You can write a parent selection algorithm that'll get plugged into the upstream generator. And we had a meeting in July. I'll talk about these 4 components here. We had a meeting in July, and we, discussed the Nexthop framework. We did some analysis on configuration and whatnot. Alan Carroll, Aaron Canary. Alan Carroll's been doing a lot of analysis work on the upstream generator. Aaron has been focused on a shared data container that will be used going forward in the framework. And then VJ and I worked on the host status together, and we've done some work on the YAML configuration. So what is the upstream generator? So the upstream generator will be a stateful object that the HTTPSM will instantiate when it determines that it needs to go upstream. The upstream generator role is to hand a transaction-ready connection back to the state machine, and if any errors are encountered by the state machine, it reports back to the upstream generator, which will adjust the host status for that host. It'll mark it down and choose another, give the state machine a new connection to try, and mark that host down that had the failure. So the Aaron's wanted to mention that I put some links in here. You can look at Alan's written up a lot of details on what the upstream generator needs to accomplish. You can look at it, go through it there. So Aaron from Oath, he's been working on a shared data storage container. So today, parent selection maintains its own internal tables of hosts and their state. HostDB does the same thing, and HostDB will, for round robin origins, it'll mark IPs down, but the point being they both maintain their own tables, and going forward, parent selection and HostDB should all use the shared data container that Aaron's working on, and it's C++ template library. We expect also the plugins will be able to use this shared storage container. And some advantages of going to that are, these different modules are not allocating their own storage, and there's just one place to go where thread safety has been taken care of, and one place to look at the performance optimization and so on. He's committed some of the code to master now. I've put the header files here, the asset pointer and extendable. And then next we were looking at the Nexthop routing configuration. It's just a YAML configuration file. We went back and took a lot of, we looked real closely at the parent.config to see what we needed to support with the new Upstream generator. The Upstream generator will be configured per remap, and it will use parent selection modules or plugins to locate upstream hosts. So could you see that? I don't know if that's, but this is what we came up with in the meeting. This is a YAML configuration file. Now I just wanted to show this because we're using some features of YAML anchors and references. So we defined our host in one file, and we, for example, this P1 host, we defined its attributes. We assign a anchor to it, and then later on, is my mouse? Then later on in the configuration file at the bottom where it shows groups. And a group is an object that will currently today in the parent.config you have a primary and secondary ring. Well, here we're just changing the terminology. It's a group. And we're assigning hosts to the group. And then here's the actual strategy file. And I sort of thought that with remap there would be multiple strategy files. You would configure different strategies per remap, but we could maintain one host file. So I was playing around with the YAML parser that would, you see where it shows the include. At that point, it would read in the host file and then concatenate the strategies file to the host file, thereby creating a single YAML document so that the anchors and references would make sense. Anchors and references don't work across YAML documents, so you need to construct one YAML document. But that's about it. That's
Back to the YAML. How do you tie it into an origin FQDN? Did I miss that?
beg your pardon? Or?
How do you tie in the strategy to an origin FQDN?
Like for MSO or something?
Isn't it the host?
Yeah, it's a host. You would,
Host goal?
like in this file, you would define a host and then you would use it somewhere in your
But the
config.
host was the parent. The host was the parent. This goes on an edge. In our world, this goes on an edge cache.
Yeah,
And
well,
it's
origins
hosted-
are, you
it's
would mostly
hosted,
define in remap, right? Or, but I mean, for like MSO, you would, you could define origin hosts here.
So how do you attach a strategy to a remap rule? Maybe that's the better question.
Okay, so say, given the current remap file layout, we talked about adding a tag in there. You would, the tag might point to the name of the strategy file. And
Okay.
so that
I mean,
would,
you have to have that in order for this to work, right?
yeah.
You have to have
Yeah.
It's not optional.
Yeah, or then we've talked about reading in all these strategy files, and they would have I don't show it here in the strategy file, but we'd give it a name. Maybe after strategy, we'd put a tag in there, and then in the remap config, whatever it is, the current layout, or when we go to ATS 9, there's a YAML remap file. We'd have this tag in there for the remap rule, and it would look up the strategy and instantiate an upstream generator using that strategy. It's
So
there's a
in 8, we have to have this parent.config goes away in ATS 8. Is that true?
Oh, it's still an ATS 8. Yeah.
Okay. 9 is it?
9, ATS 9, we're gonna convert the existing parent.config to YAML. And this is just future work. I don't think we have a,
We don't have those details yet. It works on the whiteboard.
yeah,
But that's it.
yeah. We need to have another meeting and some more beers. But that's it. That's my presentation. I went through it pretty quick. But if anybody has any questions, you can talk to me afterwards or send me an email or hit me up on Slack.
Thanks, John.
Okay.